This is the FBI poster for the 3 civil rights workers that were killed in Mississippi in 1964, known as the Mississippi Burning Case. And the one in the middle is James Chaney. I visited his grave. The inscription says, "There are those who are alive, yet will never live. Those who are dead, yet will live forever. Great deeds inspire and encourage the living." 2 people whose deeds inspire and encourage us all I'd like to talk about today, Medgar Evers and Vernon Dahmer. Medgar Evers fought in World War II against the Nazis, came home to fight racism at home in Mississippi, where African Americans were barred from voting booths, restaurants, even restrooms. The same night that President Kennedy spoke about how the grandsons of slaves were not free, a Klansman shot Medgar Evers in the back in Jackson, Mississippi. His wife came out, cradled him. His children came out as well, saw the blood, screamed. 27 years later, I'm on the front porch with his assassin, Byron D. LeBeckwith. I wrote the stories that got the case reopened against him, but he didn't know that, or so I thought. And so I came because I was obsessed. There were 132,000 records of the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, a state segregationist spy agency that operated in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. I wanted those records. They were all sealed for 50 years. I wanted those records. And so I developed sources who leaked me those records, and what they showed was at the same time the state of Mississippi was prosecuting Beckwith for Medgar Evers' murder, this other arm of the state, the Sovereignty Commission, was secretly assisting the defense, trying to get him acquitted. At the time, my story ran October 1st, 1989. At the time the story ran, the odds were literally more than 1,000,000 to 1 against this case ever being reprosecuted. There was no murder weapon, no evidence, no trial transcript. But Merle Evers believed, and some amazing things happened. Jackson police were cleaning out a closet and happened to find a box that contained the crime scene photographs of the killing of Medgar Evers, including the fingerprint of Byron D. LeBeckwith lifted from the murder weapon. A few months later, Merle Evers shared with me her copy of the trial transcript, and a few months after that, the prosecutor found the murder weapon in his father-in-law's closet. Sounds like I'm making it up. It really happened. So I spoke with Byron D. LeBeckwith for about 6 hours. It was just one racist rant after another. He kept going on and on. And, my wife had warned me not to come, said he was going to kill me. I'm like, I'm got to go. So I went and talked to him. And it was getting dark, very dark, and I really felt like I needed to go. And so I walked out to my car. He insisted on escorting me. I'm like, that's okay. He's like, escorted me anyway, and got me out to the car and says, "If you write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you. If you write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. If God does not punish you directly, several individuals will do it for him." So his wife had made me a sandwich. I think you can guess what I did with the sandwich. So he's arrested. He's brought back to Mississippi. He comes in the courtroom. He spots me. "See that boy over there? When he dies, he's going to Africa." I turned to my friend Ed. "Well, you know, I've always wanted to go to Africa." On February 5th, 1994, Byron D. LeBeckwith was convicted of Medgar Evers' murder. And when the word guilty rang out, waves of joy cascaded down the hall until it reached a foyer full of people who cheered. And Merle Evers and her daughter cheered as well. And I realized in that moment that the impossible had just become possible. There were hundreds of these kind of killings that took place during the Civil Rights era and never been prosecuted. Right after Beckwith got indicted in the case, I went and met with Ellie Dahmer, and she talked about her husband, Vernon Dahmer. He was an NAACP leader, farmer, dedicated to voting rights. The Klan didn't like that, attacked him and his family in the middle of the night, January 10th, 1966. firebombed the house, began firing their guns into the house. Vernon Dahmer woke up, grabbed his shotgun, ran to the front of the house, began firing back at the Klansmen so his family could escape safely out a back window. Unfortunately, the flames of the fire seared his lungs, and he died later that day. A few weeks later in the mail came his voter registration card. He had fought his life for all Americans to be able to vote, but never been able to cast a ballot himself. His 4 sons were in the military. His 4 sons were in the military, and this is what they found when they came back. The guy who ordered the killing was a guy by the name of Sam Bowers, head of the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan in Mississippi, the most violent Klan organization in the United States. The Vernon Dahmer family, after they met with me, met with the district attorney, he said he'd reopen the case, but he pretty quickly got cold feet. I'd almost given up on the case in '97 when this mystery man called me and said he had overheard Sam Bowers give the order to kill Vernon Dahmer. Case was reopened. The guy who'd been the key witness back in the 60s had been a guy by the name of Billy Roy Pitts. He had been involved in the killing, dropped his gun, got caught, turned state's evidence, pleaded guilty to murder. In 1998, I discovered he had never served a day, not one single day of his life sentence. Pretty big oversight, I think you'd say. So no one knew where he was, so I got on the internet and got on switchboard.com and just kind of took my chances, just typed his name in, and up it popped. Billy Roy Pitts, Denham Springs, Louisiana, has his telephone number. So I called him. First 20 minutes of the conversation went like this. How'd you find me? How'd you find me? How'd you find me? It's on the internet. The internet, I got a listed telephone number. Like, well, I guess you have to take it up with them. So as a result of my story, the Mississippi authorities issued a warrant for his arrest. He didn't care for that. In fact, he ran. And while he was on the run, he sent me a tape in the mail, and I played it. And here's what he said on it. It says, Jerry, I just thought I'd let you know you've ruined my life. But I promise if I talk to anybody, I talk to you. So here's this tape. And on the tape, he proceeds to tell me all of his involvement in killing Vernon Dahmer, all about his involvement in all this other Klan violence. This now leads, he ends up turning himself in. This now leads to the arrest of Sam Bowers and his right-hand guy, a guy by the name of Devers Nix. And Devers was the head of, and I swear I'm not making this up, the Klan Bureau of Investigation. But when Devers' family brought him in, it was like the most pitiful sight you've ever seen. There he is, in the wheelchair with the oxygen tank, and they wheel him up in front of the judge, and he's like, I can't take more than a couple steps without needing oxygen, Judge. So the judge said, I normally don't do this. I'm going to let you out without bond. A dozen days later, look where I found him. Playing golf. That's him teeing off. So he got arrested. Yeah, he loved me. So fast forward, Sam Bowers goes on trial, and Devers Nix is there to testify on his behalf. This is kind of tricky because he's charged with the same crime, and his lawyers tell him about that. Now, Devers, when you get up there, if you need to take the fifth, I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to raise my hand. Devers like, okay. So he gets up there. He starts testifying. I looked over his lawyer about 5 minutes later. So much for signaling, I guess, anyway. So he keeps testifying, yeah, I was in the Klan. Because it like tries to put a positive spin on it like there is one. While the Klan was a benevolent organization, passing out fruit baskets to the needy at Christmas. So under cross-examination, the prosecutor says, Mr. Nix, just how many fruit baskets did you pass out? And Devers says, oh, sad to say, none. I swear it was the funniest trial I ever covered in my life. Deadly serious matter, funny trial. Sam Bowers was represented by a lawyer by the name of Travis Buckley. That's him on the right and Bowers on the left. Buckley was a lawyer for the Klan back in the 60s. He was also a leader in the Klan. Okay, you with me so far? So he's questioning Billy Roy Pitts, who talked about this planning meeting prior to the attack. He's asking him about that. Now, Mr. Pitts, who all was at that planning meeting? Pitts is like, let's see. I was there. Sam Bowers was there. Devers Nix was there. Well, you were there. And Buckley's like, objection, Your Honor. You know, I've covered a lot of trials in my life as a reporter. I have to say it's the only trial I ever covered where a witness implicated the defense lawyer in the case. Sam Bowers was convicted August 21st, 1998, and three other Klansmen I've written about have also gone off to prison. Sometimes people see pictures like this of Bowers and others, and they say, Jerry, why don't you just leave these old guys alone? And I say, look, these are young killers. They just happen to get old. To date, 24 men have been convicted in these cases. Thank you. The case I'm working on now is the Mississippi burning case. It's called. It's the 3 civil rights workers who were killed and buried. 2 suspects still alive in that case, including the man whose property these bodies were buried on, claimed he didn't know anything about the fact knew anything about the bodies being buried on his property. Despite the fact the bulldozer ran at about midnight, you know, on his property where he lived right there. Yeah, you figure that one out. Anyway, the same hate, unfortunately, that led to this the other day in Mississippi. On June 26th in Jackson, Mississippi, 3 white teenagers were just looking for a black man to attack. It's sad to say, but it's true. And they attacked this man, James C. Anderson. And they beat him and ran him over with their truck, killed him. You know, before there's hate, there's fear. And before there's fear, there's dehumanization. It's justifying the destruction of somebody, basically, either figuratively or in this case, literally. As mentioned, I've had quite a few threats. I had a guy, a Klansman, threatened to slit my throat. He's a perpetual caller. And a Klansman said he had photographs of me and my family and knew where we lived, and, you know. But, yeah, some of that's frightening. But it's been a real gift that's been given to me, is to learn to live fearlessly. Learning to live fearlessly doesn't mean you have no fear. Learning to live fearlessly means being able to move beyond your fears and worries, to live a life that matters. And that's what this is all about. It's being willing to stand up when somebody's telling a racist joke and say no. Or if someone degrades women or other people, you say no. It's willing to stand up and do the right thing, even when we know ostracism awaits. Not too long after Sam Bowers was convicted, Billy Roy Pitts testified in a hearing. And when he got done, he walked to the back of the courtroom and ran into the Dahmer family. There's Mrs. Dahmer children. And Billy Roy Pitts apologized to Mrs. Dahmer and asked her to forgive him for what he did. And she forgave him. And she began to cry. And the Dahmer children who were there began to cry. He began to cry. And I began to cry. And as I left the courthouse that day, I felt the cool autumn breeze and saw the leaves and thought about Vernon Dahmer and others who lived lives that matter. I thought about that inscription on James Chaney's grave. There are those alive yet will never live, those who are dead yet will live forever. And I thought, each day we're engraving the words with our lives. What will our headstones say? Thank you very much.